Hey, Kyle, you turn the mic towards you perhaps to make sure we're.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and this whatever you want to call it. Appreciate it. Here we are again in early January, getting ready to start and continue with what we've been doing. If I could, Tom, if you would, please. I got you there.
Divided in Oreo.
The share?
No milk, nobody has to go upset.
Cannon.
Here.
Eisenbrown.
Here.
McClary.
Here.
Me. Snodgrass.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
And Steel Smith.
Here.
And Maddie.
Here.
Awesome.
Good.
Okay.
We're gonna do tonight is, we're gonna start off. First of all, the approval of the minutes from the October 17th. And then also we've had minutes.
Yeah, we haven't approved.
Oh.
Oh, we don't have to do that, okay. So the approval of the October 17th, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. We'll go ahead and move right into our subcommittees. What we'll do is we'll go through all of this and then we'll get to the public. Anybody out in Zoom land will just, however, I've never done it, but I guess there's a way to let us know when you want to talk. Raise your hand or.
Yeah.
Makes sense. If everybody here that's in attendance, make sure that you sign in, please. And everybody that's out in Zoom country, if you would make sure that there's a way that we can identify names.
Yeah, I've got, we'll
it.
get those tracked down here. If I don't have a name, I'll ask them to provide their name if it's just a number. And,
At this time, I'll go ahead and turn the meeting over to Mr. Eisenbrown.
okay, so the goal here tonight is, as we said, kind of kicking off for 24, a little, a brief year in review from each of the subcommittee leads as to kind of what was worked on last year, and more so have this become a work plan going forward. We'd like to get through that from the subcommittees, and then after we do that and have Holly make a few comments, then we're going to open up for any questions about the subcommittee reports, as well as hopefully have a little bit of discussion with folks about what you view as what you think is important going forward in 24 as well. So given that, first up is Jim Steelsmith.
All righty, thank you. I'm on the developer and real estate relations. Last year, of course, was a big year when it came to real estate in Harlem Township. A lot of properties were being looked at, transferred, not just large properties, but I keep track of the feel of the area, and I'm sure a lot of you do. You go on Zillow and Realtor.com, and I track these properties, and we are really a robust area, more so than a lot of our neighbors. Delaware, even though it's robust up there, our properties, apples to apples, bring more money. We're close to the blast zone with Intel, so people want to be close to that. So the real estate market in Harlem is really robust if the properties are priced right. And that includes not only raw ground, but houses. If anybody's looked at it lately, there's hardly anything for sale right now. What's been for sale has been picked off. It's not springtime, so the new stuff hadn't come out. The other problem in people, and especially with large parcels also, is where am I going to move? So, you know, you always have that problem. Land is now starting, after a slow fall, the raw ground is now starting to sell. there again, very little of it's going to farmers. It's going to look for development and or speculation. Interest rates are coming down, and I think I've talked to 2 developers called me today. They're looking forward, of course, and just like everybody else, for their interest rates to come down. They think that'll help. The couple problems with development, and the developers and all of us have watched this materialize as we ended up last year, is they want to do something. Of course, everybody in the room should know that nothing's going to happen until the sewer's done on Smothers Road. Committee will give a report on the sewer here in a little bit. So that's one utility. Again, the utility committee will also talk about water. And if anybody's been reading the paper and watching Richmond County, there's been a big fight for water. So we're still in that blast zone also. Even though we don't get our water from the east, we get our water from the west. Most of our water comes from Alum Creek. But developers are still stymied as to how much they can do, not only now because of sewer, water, and electric. So now we have a problem with those 3 that we didn't anticipate over a year ago. So our core, Central Ohio Regional Planning is pushing everybody around Intel to provide more housing. The problem with that is if you have a problem with the things I just described to you, then how are you going to give more housing if you don't have the utilities and the infrastructure? And or we still have a lot of people who want to continue to farm. So it's creating quite a dynamic. And but they're not putting just the pressure on us, they're putting it on all the communities. And they just gave Columbus, I think it was $100 million to come up with some more housing, pushing this way. So we're watching that very closely. And so that's basically where we're at. Things are good. There's nothing to get alarmed about. Have a good rapport with the people who are investing. Excuse me. Good rapport with them. Seem to have a good rapport with most of the landowners, and everybody's concerned about Harlem Township. And going forward, I think it's going to be a good year. And I think a lot of this will come together when the Utilities Committee finishes their report. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name's Bruce McClary. I'm the chairman of the Utility Subcommittee. So we've spent a lot of our year on infrastructure, working to keep up with the many utility providers that get us our services, trying to make sure they understand the things that are important to Harlem Township. What I want to do is try and hit each of some of the majors on those and provide a brief update on some of the projects. And Jim mentioned the big one, sanitary sewer extension project. If you've been by the Smothers Harlem area, you can see work's been going on there. I think they started around the May timeframe, and they've worked pretty much around the clock, except for some Sundays and holidays, from what I can tell, to keep that moving. We asked for a status update of where they were, and we just got a status update in yesterday, and I'd like to share that with everybody because it's hot off the presses. So what they told us was it's shaft 3, and that's what's going in at that particular location. But at shaft 3, Obayashi construction has reached the vertical depth of approximately 180 feet below ground surface. And they have begun excavating horizontally to prepare for the arrival of the tunnel boring machine. The tunnel boring machine is expected to arrive on site toward the end of January. And then that will, they'll basically start bringing that down shaft 3, and then assembly will occur down deep at the 180-foot level at the tunnel, which to me is just amazing to think about. So they must take it down there in pieces. And then they expect it'll take about a month for them to put the tunnel boring machine together. And then once that's together, they anticipate that around the end of February, they'll start horizontally boring the tunnel. And what they estimate is once that tunnel boring machine arrives, they'll probably be done with the blasting. So anybody that happens to be in that general area that feels the rumble when they put out the notice that the blasting's occurring, that should be ending probably around the end of January, early February. So they are still using the mid 2026 completion timeframe. But, I thought it was interesting to see, I think they initially said about 190, 95 feet was what they'd be going depth. It looks like they're going to stop it at 180 feet where they're at this point in time. Still just an amazing deal. So that's the sewer extension project. And as Jim mentioned, a lot of the developers, obviously what happens from that standpoint when it's done is very, very critical. And that's something we continue to work closely with Delaware County on to understand what their plans are. On road projects, what we try and do is monitor with Delaware County Regional Planning what they have planned. We also try and spend time with, monitoring some of the meetings with the Licking County Transportation Improvement District. Recently, the county awarded design contracts for roundabouts at County Line and Fancher, that intersection, and also the County Line and Center Village Road intersection. So they're estimating completion date of those to be 2025, but the design contracts, I think, have been awarded for those two roundabouts. And if you travel 605 on Ohio Department of Transportation, you can see that they've started some of the early clearing for the roundabout at Fancher Road in 605. A lot of the trees have been taken out, so you can see where that's happening. Last on their website there, they still indicating that would look like it would be done in the fall of 2024. Under water services, as Jim mentioned, we're in regular communication with Delco. What we thought would be one of the easier utilities to kind of understand and just keep monitoring progress. They've got a second tower they're going to be putting in Center Village, and looks like they've gotten started on that project. We thought all that would be fine, but as we continue to have meetings, we find it's perhaps a little more going to be more difficult than we think for them to perhaps meet all the demands that are coming their way, not just from Harlem Township, but in Delaware County in general. So we're keeping close contact with them, but trying to make sure they understand what we think our needs will be so we can be serviced. The last big project I'll talk about is the electricity project. Spent a tremendous amount of time this year with AEP, many meetings about the Vassal Green Chapel Transmission Enhancement Project for powered grid improvements to connect new customers to the electric grid. I guess my view is that's new customers, but not Harlem Township new customers. We enlisted the support of some government officials, some people that we believe carry big influence to get us to very, very senior levels of AEP and AEP transmission, trying to make sure that they understood the value of the land in Harlem Township and how we thought it would certainly be helpful to us if a line had to go through, that it could be one, not two. Lots of time spent there, but if you're keeping up with that information, you can see their mind's been made up. I think they've got their routes out on the website now. Interesting, they've got two lines coming through Harlem Township, and pretty much when it gets to the edge, then those two lines come together when you get into Licking County. Very, very frustrating for those of us that have worked very, very hard to try and change that to something that's more reasonable. But in the end, we haven't had much success. Maybe a little success in helping them go along a couple property boundaries instead of splitting, valuable, farmland in half. But they certainly are on the path to continue to go their expedited route to get their Power Siting Board authority to move forward. And I think I'll wrap up with the AEP project. Really has helped, I think, identify the difficulty that a township enterprise like Harlem Township has to be influencers in obtaining the services the way that we think we will need them with what we have a vision of what the township's about. there are, many important issues impacting the community, and we've got to find a way to gain some kind of partnership, I believe, where we've got, we're bringing more muscle to the game. Right now, it's very easy for us to get kind of run over by these big utilities because they view it as rural and they want to turn it into what they would like it to be for their purposes. So from a, I guess utilities subcommittee, we'll be working really, really hard to figure out how we can gain some kind of leverage where we can be more successful in influencing a lot of the major utility providers. That's it.
Okay, Molly?
Happens to me. So first, I want to just commend some of these other subcommittees who are doing a lot more of the real hard work. They spend so much time on this, and it's just amazing to me that they've been able to accomplish and kind of navigate in the past year approximately that I've been on this committee. Me as subcommittee for communications, I've been focused on being able to take everything that's going on here and communicate it out to the residents of the township and other interested stakeholders. So I spent the year really trying to build out an email list where I can send out emails to the township to keep people informed that way. So if you all remember, most of you, I hope, were at the series of meetings last January, early February, where we laid out the quick strategy guide. Everyone who signed in and provided an email from those meetings, put that into a list and have been basically collecting emails throughout the year ever since. Anytime we have an update or a newsletter that gets sent out, I kind of try to always remind people, hey, if you're not on our list, if you're not getting these emails, please let me know. We're up to about 22% of households in the township that I have on our email list, which I think it's pretty good. I mean, I don't think it'll ever be 100%, but we're at the point now where I think most of the people who are actively engaged probably already know and are on that list. So my next goal is to kind of try to reach the folks who maybe aren't as actively paying attention to all this and try to get more people even more engaged. So along with that, I've spent time making sure that all the relevant information is also on the township's website. So there's a strategic planning committee page that we have on the township website. And I have really added a lot of content to that. All the meeting minutes get posted there after they're approved, links to recorded videos for meetings that are able to be recorded, links to the relevant information for all of the projects that have just been talked about. So if you're looking for a good place to kind of start for some of that information, please check the township website. A lot of good information is actually on there. So really, that's kind of all I've got. It's not as long or as interesting as some of the other updates on the real life.
Although I would say that, that work is why you're all here tonight.
Yeah.
And so we run a year and a half ago from zero mailing list to over 500 contacts now and continuing to build it. And so I think, we'll just kind of keep building that out. And Molly gets frequent positive feedback from the community that just, keep the information flowing. And what we're trying to do is prevent dark holes out there and let folks know that there's still work being done.
I did help the township has historically sent out an annual newsletter, and I did help provide and organize all the content from our committee in that printed newsletter that got mailed over. I think it was July-ish or something like that. Since obviously there was a lot of updates related to what this committee is doing. So we had an entire page on infrastructure and a big section on the strategic planning committee. So in that printed newsletter, we make sure to provide as much information as possible as well.
Okay, good. Well, I'm Steve Eisenbrown, another member of kind of residents at large on the committee. I've taken on the task to start to get in contact with the local school board or schools, Big Walnut school system. And we're really at the front edge of that. In fact, Molly just sent me an email today. She was auditing the recording of the most recent school board meeting, and there was an announcement about how a committee was formed for township interactions. So that seems to be a something new and the name of the people that are participating on that.
Yeah, it just seemed like there was like a subcommittee of the board or whatever that is specific for like village and township and interactions, so I found out who
Good.
from the board was on that committee.
So we'll, and I think we'll probably also reach out to the, you know, the superintendent just to have a chat directly there as well. But we had, when we did the candidates night here back in October, you know, there were some noise being made, but it was pretty clear in that meeting that there wasn't a lot of knowledge from the school board candidates or even the current member what's all going on in Harlem Township. So we've got some work to do, but if you've been to some of the meetings and when you look at how we've partitioned with some of the overlays, you know, there's provisions in there as we start to get some build out taking place, trying to get the developers to commit to committing land so that as we need more schools in Big Walnut, maybe we can land a few out this direction and not everything up in Sunbury. So we'll be doing more on that here in the coming months. All of the board is now reseated after the election. They had their kickoff meeting, and so we'll make a reach out to them here in the coming month. Next on the agenda, Holly Matty is here, and she's with Crossroads, and Crossroads has been the consultancy firm that's been with us from the very get-go for the last year and a half, and has helped lead us through this journey. And I guess Holly's going to give us an update here on how she sees our next steps in 24.
Before we talk about 24, I want to reflect a little bit on 23 too. I think we all need to celebrate what was accomplished last year. In March, the quick strategy guide was adopted. It was something that was done very quickly, hence the name Quick Strategy Guide, in response to what is going on around you. I think we started out with, you know, a lot of people at a church and ended up with a lot of people understanding the challenges that this township is faced with and how we need to come together as a group to go forward. That guide really has a lot of recommendations in it, but it really boils down to two main things in my mind. One is township moving forward with zoning, and two, figuring out how to move that together with a strategic partner. So the board quickly got together and started the zoning process. I said in March when we adopted the quick strategy guide that I anticipated being able to get through one overlay district by the end of the year. I had one committee member come up and said, "You really can get through that in a year, and by the end of the year?" And I said, "Yes." Well, you guys blew it out of the water. You adopted 3 in that time frame. So we started with the mixed use overlay district along Fancher Road. And then we moved into the clustered residential conservation district, which is in this middle area, south of Center Village, down to Fancher Road. And then the mixed use overlay along County Line Road with the industrial component along it. All in response to be prepared for the township to control its own destiny, not let development happen to you, but for you to be able to say, this is what we want it to look like, because we know it's going to happen regardless. So that's where we went, what we did in 2023. And this group, this committee and the trustees and the zoning commission were all instrumental in getting that forward. The residents were also a huge part of that by being able to come to our education sessions to learn and understand why we need to do this, and then to be able to educate and talk to your other residents so that we were able to get the zoning in place. Zoning was the first step because that is something the township can do. It is a power that the township has. It's one of the fewer powers that townships have. There's a lot of things that townships can't do that other communities can do. So you don't have as much control over water, sewer, electric. You don't have as many financing tools. So we've always said from the get-go that we needed to have a strategic partner to help move forward with them. So in 2024, that's gonna be our goal, is to identify, the strategic partners that are within the area and identify who, makes the most sense to help move, projects forward and being able to move the vision of this township forward. We have a plan and we want that plan to go forward. We want that vision to be implemented. So I think that, in my opinion, is the next step, is to identify potential partnerships.
See, everybody needs to understand something. You know, I'm a trustee. This is a consultant that we hired. The rest of the folks are volunteers. These folks, what these folks have done in the last year and a half to 2 years, has totally blown my mind. Because I wish I could get employees to work as hard as these guys have. This township, and I'll go out on the limb to say this township owes them a debt of gratitude. These guys have really worked their backsides off. I wish you'd have too, even though you get paid.
Well, you know, there was at the outset of this, and, you know, everybody in this room and on Zoom here kind of understands Harlem Township and sort of, you know, the focus on remaining rural and to a great extent historically, we don't want change anywhere. I mean, that would have been the mantra. And as we set out a year and a half ago, you know, we had just come out of a couple of votes where there were multiple referendums that were taking place to try to block some zoning and, you know, and we're going, boy, we don't really know how this is going to go because as we want to put forward these overlays, all of them are referendable, if that's a word. But we knew our biggest challenge was education. And so that's what we focused on at the start of this process and then heading on into this year. And I guess I think what we've proven, and we even had some of the county commissioners sort of come here and characterize, you know, Harlem Township as being the backwards corner of the county. I mean, and it was like, okay, well, have you looked at us lately is what we told them. And look at the time we've spent with people trying to get it understood. We understand the threat on the development side, but we also think people are engaged here. And the fact that all three above board activities on these overlays successfully went through the trustees and then really not even a peep from anyone trying to raise a referendum vote to try to defeat that, I think is really a positive sign for Harlem Township. It's not for the committee. I mean, we worked on education, but the township has engaged in many different ways. And I think the township took the information and the education that was provided and sort of all kind of shaking their head, you know, some parts of this we may not like, but the alternative we really won't like. And that's kind of the whole annexation discussion. And we won't go down that path, but on the flip side, that's still hanging out there. I mean, even with the work we've done, we've got to keep working ourselves forward here in the future. So Holly, did you have anything? Okay. So without this turning into mayhem, we have 19 Zoomers out there, plus the folks for the Zoomers. I guess you can sort of see on the picture, we got about 20 something people in the room. At this point, we'll open it up for general questions from what you just heard from the committee leads. And then beyond that, we're beyond questions to what you heard. We'd also like any other input that you might offer to us for things to continue to focus on or work on. So did have one chat come in and the question there is, are we going to get any AEP substations in Harlem Township in the future? Will that help with the industrial with the industrial data center? So that's the question.
Well, I'll start.
You want to start?
I'll start with that.
Yeah.
I sat in a meeting with AEP and as Bruce alluded to, Beth Lear. Yes, there will be a substation. I couldn't get them to. I couldn't get them to commit as to how that substation was gonna be fed. I spent 40 years as an electrician. I know you can't put a substation without it. Even I figured that one out. I don't know who the gentleman was in the room with us that day. The gentleman, there was a guy who he didn't identify himself, but he piped in very fast when I said, can you tell me there's not gonna be more? I can't commit to it. That's all I'm gonna say. What does that mean? So yes, there will be a substation. There's gonna have to be a substation. We need it. I mean, just with the residentials.
Yeah.
How it's gonna be fed, I don't have a clue.
And part of the complication is that the substation will probably be in the northeast quadrant of the township, where along the 37 corridor, where most of the industrial development will probably take place. That's not AEP territory, that's Consolidated Electric, the Rural Electric Co-op. So not only if the Rural Electric Co-op buys their power from
Shades under your chin.
you've got to coordinate the co-op, buy a piece of ground, build a substation that have AEP there. It gets.
We spent a lot of time, myself, we spent a lot of time in meetings with trying to get the point across of what they were potentially doing to Harlan Township. I don't want to say that I consider it a victory because it wasn't, but I don't consider it a loss either. We did get them, as we said, we did get them to commit to try not to diagonal across anybody's property. They did commit to try to follow property lines the best they could. But there's still some questions.
The only other piece I'll add is one of the concerning things we heard was that there is a significant lead time to order the appropriate equipment that's necessary to put into substation. In some respects, I think Consolidated was telling us it's maybe like a 3-year. I'm looking at Tom because he was at the meeting with me, but it's close to a 3-year timeline to get in line to acquire the type of things needed. So, our thought was, 3 years is a long time out, but when you look at, things going on within the township, this gets back to us having enough leverage to get somebody to do something to at least start planning for that, because in real terms, a lot can happen in 3 years. And if you wait 3 years to get that accomplished, then maybe the time's been reduced to 2 years, but then it's still 2 years beyond that.
Well, one comment I know was made, I said, we see growth coming. We know it's gonna happen. What are the plans? And the guy shrugged his shoulders and said, we don't work on speculations. So, you don't build it and then put power to it.
Right.
So somebody's doing some speculating somewhere.
Well, before I go to another one on the Zoom here, in the room, any questions?
You have mentioned 3 utilities, but nothing about natural gas. Anything there? You gonna need more capacity or what?
On the gas side, we haven't spent as much time there just because, it's in the township, it's in a lot of different places. So we've spent so much time with AEP and the power side over this past year. We haven't done a lot with gas. So that's on the agenda for 24 to start digging into that more specifically to make sure we have enough capacity. But we do know a lot of work was being done, up toward the Intel side with those gas lines going in, with the provider. And, at least looking on the website, that seems to be progressing and should be wrapping up. But I'm going to say the greater part of the township, we haven't spent a lot of time on that. That's a 2024 initiative. Good question.
Although as you drive around, you see a lot of natural gas risers that are available.
Yeah. That's what.
And I know for a fact, because we tapped into the pipe out in front of our house on Harlem, and that's a 4-foot, 600 PSI pipe. So there's gas in the neighborhood. It may not be down every street and equal, but there's a lot of gas in Harlan
Lot of
Township.
capacity, we think.
No, I think we have plenty of
I
gas.
think,
The high pressure, as you were alluding to, and there's a lot in.
yeah. Yes,
Real quick, what is the free overlays or specifically the Fancher Road overlay? What are you, can you expound on that briefly?
The Fancher Road overlay is mixed use. So it is an overlay district that goes over the existing zoning. So the existing zoning stays in its place. And then this overlay is hovering over top of it and has specific development standards in it for mixed use development. Mixed use being a combination of residential and commercial and office uses. It could actually be in a mixed use building, or it could just be a mixture of those uses on the property. So when property owners want to sell for development, or there's land out there that a developer owns, they could pull down the cloud, which is pull down the overlay district, and develop in accordance with those standards. And that allows the township to have the density and the type of zoning in place that the developers would want otherwise go to neighboring communities to get. So it helps protect the township.
but they would have to do that at a minimum acreage of 25 acres. So they can't just spot themselves around and grab 5 here and 5 there. They would need a contiguous 25 acres to be able to put that into play within the township.
And you can see the details on the township website, the text of the overlay district, the map of the overlay district. All of that detail and the quick strategy guide, all of that has links on the township list.
Okay, Bruce, I've got one for you, since you're the sewer guy here. Once the sewer's available, will residents be required to hook up to it? I have at 6754 Harlem and plan in the next year or so to build a house, and I don't want to invest in an expensive septic system if I'll be required to in the future to hook up into the sewer line. I don't know, you know, either required or want the option to is the other way to phrase that, I suppose.
Yeah, so,
Years.
so the sewer project, they're talking, as I said, I think 2026 before it would be completed, and that is the shaft and all the work to bring it to the edge of the township. Then from that point, the plan has to be put into how do you move that throughout the township to make it available. The answer that we were provided by the Delaware County Sewer District was that they would not require existing homeowners to tap into the sanitary sewer unless they had deficiencies in their septic system or whatever system that they had. So they also indicated that typically when it becomes available, existing homeowners would be able to tap in at a significant discount to what new home builds would be. So that's what we've been told. I would say I don't have any reason to think that that's not an accurate statement, but as a resident, as a homeowner with a septic system, and I sit 300 feet off the road, I do get concerned of, okay, well, my septic system's been good for the 30 years I've been in my home. When it's inspected next time and there's sewer running down the road, will I still get the same certification that my system is functioning as it should be and not be pushed? But at the point when we've asked that exact question, Delaware County tells us they would not, people would not have to tap in unless they've got an existing problem with their septic.
But who will provide the trunk lines from the main sewer line then to the community? So
That's a great question, and that's what we've been efforting to try and get Delaware County to at least start that process. Usually that is somewhat developer driven.
Developer driven.
So where developers are thinking about putting their homes will drive where they want to take that sanitary sewer, because obviously they'll want to start gaining revenue from the usage of that. So usually it's a joint exercise with developers that are putting in, homes, and they work together on where they send that. But right now we have shared with Delaware County, they know where our overlays are. We've shared with them some of the properties that have been bought and some of the ideas that are being talked about by the developers, so that they got an idea, but I don't believe any specific planning has started yet of exactly where they're going to take it from Smothers and Harlem there and how they get it permeated throughout the township.
They will be concentrating on new development. So if you're already in an existing area, there's no money involved for them. So they want to go to the new developments. So consequently, if you're in several sections, especially on the east part of the township, that have been there for a while, and there's no large development areas there, usually the sewer is not going to be there for a long, long time, if ever.
Okay, we'll do one more off of Zoom here. I think this is kind of a Holly and Jim question. What's the definition of strategic partners? Question mark. Investors, commercial and residential developers, what is it we mean by that? And when we call strategic partners?
A strategic partner is somebody who has the power and the ability to do things that we cannot do as a township. So as Bruce alluded to, we can't make Delco, the sewers, the electric, these people, we don't have any power. The township also does not have taxing abilities or borrowing abilities. So if example, we were just talking about the sewer. So if we wanted to see the sewer run a certain area, we don't have the ability to get the financing and run it ourselves. So we have to look for an entity that has that power. Sometimes that can be another, like a municipality. It could be a large developer. Usually the developers don't have, we could do a public-private partnership, but they don't have the financing ability that, for instance, a municipality has. For instance, if you look up at Sunbury as they're developing towards the freeway, they have the ability to sell bonds, and so they can finance that. We don't have that, so we're sort of at the mercy of our neighbor to the east and to the south, who say we have these resources, and so we don't want them coming in. So we're looking, when we first started, Holly had always said we needed a strategic partner, and that would probably be a government entity along with some private entities that have that power to help us get those utilities to expand upon our overlays. When that happens, that keeps the bad actors, so to speak, out of the township and lets us develop forward as to what we want as a township. And the main thing that the committee always works on when we're looking for this is we're always working towards the quality of life for our residents. And when you have Columbus or New Albany, dare I say those names, they don't care about us. If they annex you and you become part of that entity, Columbus is what, 600,000-700,000 people? You just become part of that. They don't care about us. So when we're looking for something, we want to, like I said, we're working on quality of life for our residents, keeping some ability to determine our own fate. So, but we don't have borrowing power and taxing power. So you look for an entity that can help us. And there's all kinds of different ways for them to borrow. And then, when the sewer goes in, there's sewer fees. When the water goes in, there's water fees. There's different ways to pay for it, which depending on, where we go with this, how that gets paid for. So there are ways to pay for it. We just, as a township, don't have the ability to do that. So we need somebody who has that ability so we can get these things accomplished.
And now that, the principal zoning work has been done, that's where we're turning our attention for our efforts heading into 24.
Right.
Is it, is in that manner. Yes, sir.
Yes, in March of 23, at the trustees meeting, the park committee submitted a proposal to renovate the restrooms in the park. We presented at that time an architect study and approximate cost. The trustees respectfully discussed it and for a number of reasons did not accept that proposal. One of their concerns was uncertainty regarding the configuration of township facilities, firehouse, the administration, the maintenance, the park, and now the empty or the former concrete plant. So how is this area going to look in the future? How is it going to be developed? And they didn't try to answer that question at that meeting, but they distinctly referred it to the strategic.
Yeah, I remember them dodging that bullet pretty well. One of them was sitting here.
Yeah, so I can answer that.
On, sort of the main area for remaining overlay development is to look at what is called the village center. And there's a degree of master planning that needs to be done there. Because the goals, and if you remember going back a year and a half ago, we talked about how that sub area E, right? Sub area E. Yeah, we're hoping for kind of a mixture of usage, perhaps, a farmer's market by the park or possibly on the concrete plant site. We don't have any firm plans, but yes, we in the strategic planning committee are working on the definition for that sub area for an overlay. And so that is probably the remaining zoning area of action that we need to take on under our belt this year.
If I may, as that one trustee said. I do remember that night, and I remember I was probably one of the more vocal ones, which is hard to believe. A lot of where I know I am going as a trustee is I don't want to just spend money and put a building that is not really where it needs to be. I've sat back and I've tried to give this committee, which they were working towards, but they were putting out the fires first. I mean, I know we all want that over there. I'd love to have it already built the way we want. That I know is coming up. I know that's an area that they're going to be addressing soon. And I want, as this was me, this is just one of your trustees, I wanted this group and this, your all's input as to what you wanted it to look like. I have a vision. I have a vision of what I would like for this area. I want to see if my vision and your all's vision is the same. And then we have to get, the other two trustees to go along with it and everything else, which I don't think is going to be an issue. We're sitting here, we know there's a huge, I hear, demand and want for improvement of the building over there to have a farmer's market. One of the things I know, I remember saying that night is, I didn't want to put that kind of money out to, one, restore that or revamp that building for two reasons. I think I've gone over this with you, maybe even privately. Once we start a renovation of that size, I'm not 100% sure, we just hit on a little bit ago, the septic system is going to be approved. We could all of a sudden end up without a facility. That's my first concern. My second concern is to put that kind of money out. And in 6 months, a year, all of a sudden, one of these people that are working, because when we decide to work with somebody, I'm going to be going to them and saying, hey, my community wants this. Are you going to help us? I'm hoping to get some help to put some of these other nicer buildings over there. If we build a farmer's market, it's going to have a bathroom. You know, we're not gonna put a building over there without a bathroom. A farmer's market would have that. You know, where's the maintenance building going? There's a new maintenance building in Compton. It didn't fall on deaf ears. And I can speak for myself, I can't speak for my other two at the time, but I can because I know that they weren't. It was not being just shrugged off. We wanted to make sure we were handling. And
Sure.
giving this committee the right power.
We certainly accepted it in that spirit, yes. And I just want to encourage you, and our park committee would like to be part of the conversation. When we're discussing.
But asked me to look at that as the next zoning overlay. It is on the horizon to look at that.
Once again, as I said a while ago, this is a volunteer group.
Okay, so that is.
And we would be more than welcoming to have the input when we start discussing this area. I would love for folks from the park, I would love for more people to come in and put their input, because that's how these guys build. That's how these guys built the overlays.
I think it'd be easy to get participation, discussion on that level. I just want to throw in one more thing. Don't know if the committee is aware of the 2010 engineering study.
Yeah.
That the township paid for. Toward developing the land on the east side of 605 into park. I have a copy of that if you want
I would like to see that. I haven't
to look
seen
at that.
If you can get that to,
I can leave it with
if
you.
you can leave it
Yeah,
with me, I
this,
will.
this came from Jerry.
Oh, okay.
This was his copy.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to see that because I have not seen that myself, and I'll get some copies of that ready.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a comment here, first of all, thanking all the people for all the effort, and then the question is stormwater handling on the agenda?
There you go.
And this question comes from a friend of mine who sent me some nice videos this evening showing what it looks like in his front yard, his driveway, and the huge culverts that are overrun with water. So he's got a very legitimate question. So stormwater at this point is still really handled by Delaware County. What we have done in the township, and one of the first things we did in 2023 was add some additional language, at least into our overlays and in the zoning application process, where stormwater management now it becomes a focus. So when someone is coming in with a development proposal, they know that stormwater management, the release rates and things like that are all going to be looked at very, very closely and will need to be appropriate for them to have a good chance of success in getting any zoning changes made. That's where we're at today. We have done some initial investigation into the whole theory of looking at more of a township-wide stormwater management program, but the difficulty is there are so many different developers now that are in the mix that we're really trying to look at it on almost a project-by-project basis. But it fits into my utilities subcommittee. We did lose a little traction on it during 2023 because again, we spent a lot of time on the AEP project. But we will continue to make that a focus, and at least for my friend that's asking the question, the zoning guy sitting right next to me, and we've already talked about it a bit, so I'll be in touch with him.
Okay, in the room, a question before I go ahead.
What kind of footprint can we expect the substations to occupy?
That'd be a call.
I'll repeat that just in case people in Zoom. What kind of footprint would we expect substations to occupy?
Hopefully, I'll say this, hopefully, let's say substation first. I would love for it to be one. Through my years of electrician, my last 5 years, I built 4 substations. Couple acres, I mean, 3, 4, 5 acres, probably. I don't know. It's gonna depend on the demand. If we get, if somehow we end up with a strictly residential demand, it's gonna be a little smaller. If we end up with some mixture, which I'm assuming we will, it's gonna increase. If we end up with a data center or something crazy like that, it could be, unfortunately, that's when you start getting into the malls, because it seems like each one of those has their own.
Because this would be potentially as large as what's on Harlem and Smothers.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Oh, my goodness.
Easily. Go over. We can't get back there, I was back there. The Amazon off of Beach Road. There's a good idea, go over there and look at that substation.
Thank you.
It's. This is why I wanted an answer from me.
You guys
And
plan.
would it be fair to say, to assume that it would be closer to the industrial side of the township?
I'm hoping, and there's a target that they seem to, and I pointed out something interesting, Tim, they blocked their own path, which I think is hilarious. To get there, it would be the northeast quadrant. And it actually, there's a spot where it could actually be outside of township. I don't think, I don't know that would happen.
Okay, there's a question that, can we expect to get the industrial overlay approved for the lands greater than 25 acres on Woodtown Road? And we're working on expanding some overlays up towards Woodtown, going up 605, right? But it hasn't been determined yet to the degree that would be an industrial overlay. So it's really early in the planning stages from my point of view. And Holly, shaking her head, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
We have just been looking at that and we've gone back and forth on potential uses for that area with the subcommittee. So that is still in the works and no definitive uses have been identified at this point.
Okay, and then the other from the same person, if any companies approach us for a data center, is Harlem Township open to approve the request for the lands on Woodtown Road? So it's a part two to that question, I guess. Would potentially, and I don't think we know what, there's not an over.
There's not a movement currently.
And
I don't think that could be answered right now.
and there's not enough juice anyhow.
Yeah, no,
There's no juice.
there's no water, I mean, there's
Juice as in
no
electricity,
electricity, no sewage,
No water.
no water.
right? Okay. In the room, before I go back to Zoom,
Woodtown and 605?
it just says Woodtown, but I mean that.
I'm trying to think of where they'd even be talking.
Hmm?
I'm trying to think of where they would be thinking that. On Woodtown.
Well, I think they're probably thinking up in the 605 Woodtown area. I'll see if I get a clarification here from
I'd like to know where that came from.
in that one. Will farming field tiles be protected?
Sorry.
Will farming field tiles be protected when development gets underway?
Okay. So what I'll tell you, we've tried to do is that there's one project now that's getting close to coming to conclusion. That's the Conservancy at Duncan Run, I believe it's what it's called now. It's at Harlem Road and Gorsuch Road. I think it's the former Fling property. So that was really the first big development that we had come our way, and it's being done as a planned residential conservation district. So that got us involved in making sure that we're trying to, we understand if there are drawings, if we know if there have been tiles put in for farms, that if it is in a development area, that would all be taken care of and the tiles would be treated appropriately. Because the biggest concern we believe that everybody should have, and some have told us that they have, is that if you have an existing farm and the farm next to you is sold and then is developed, that what is sold and developed, if it's not taken care of properly, it could completely mess up the existing farm that is still going to want to be farming, and they don't want to end up with lots of water and poor crop production. So we're again looking at that on an individual basis. We have talked with Delaware County Soil and Water. They do have some maps of where those tiles are. As it comes about, we now have, Mike on as zoning inspector. So I believe there was a time when those kinds of things happen. There may not have been someone looking to ensure that if a field tile was cut, that it was appropriately rerouted. If a basement was being dug, I'm confident now that that is happening because of the staff that we have here now within Harlem Township. So that's how we're trying to address it on a place by place basis. I don't know, Tom or Holly, if you have any additional thoughts.
Having it appropriately addressed during the construction is what I was gonna say, and a lot of times. The Soil and Water District or the county will look at that during construction phase of the major subdivision as well.
Yeah, I might add,
But having Mike out in the field is a plus, to have your own, eyes on it. And I think having maybe even some language built into the zoning could be helpful too.
Delaware County, I might add, the Delaware County building code requires them to reroute that tile. The problem is nobody was there to catch them.
Right. So that's my fears.
But yeah, so it is in the statute.
Mhm.
It's not something that we have to write new. Somebody has to enforce it.
Okay, we don't have any more questions, comments on Zoom. And if there are more in the room, but I would like to just open it up a little bit to say, what else is on your mind that we should be taking into account through the course of 24 here? I mean, are there some areas that you haven't heard from us about that we should try to get onto our agenda?
Early on last year, we talked a little bit about infrastructure with roads to connect with all of this development going east-west. We know that county line is gonna be widened going north-south.
Right.
But is there any more conversations or any more progress on what's gonna be possibly happening? Especially with the extension of Smothers?
Yeah, so we meet with Delaware County Regional Planning on the Delaware County roads side of things. And they have a township liaison that we have a relationship with. We've had one meeting with him, and actually our newest trustee, Matt Yeager, attended that meeting. The commitment we have with him is to meet on a regular basis and understand what things they might be thinking about. Because we want to be sure that they understand that, we as a community might have thoughts, so they could be thinking about doing something with a particular road or going a certain direction. We may have some thoughts that there are alternatives that they should at least consider, because they don't live down here, they don't work here. If they get some folks in a room that's all they do, they could get, I'm gonna call it tunnel vision. And we do have, I see Ron sitting over your right shoulder there, Ron Maddox, who's a retired engineer that was his livelihood. So he has graciously volunteered his time to attend lots of meetings to help us understand what things might, are being discussed. So we might want to get into certain areas. So we think we have good insight into what at least they're thinking about now. And right now, there doesn't appear to be anything overly active inside the township.
Well, it's in the forefront of those of us who live on Fancher Road, because that is the only east-west corridor that goes
Right.
all the way to 62.
Yeah, the only thing we know, so we do believe that 2026 is when they're talking about a roundabout at Fancher and Harlem. So that is, so where so it is on the Delaware County planning piece. It has not gone to any contract or anything, but they are still thinking that it would be a good idea, because they believe there will be increased traffic, obviously on Fancher Road, to put in a roundabout there. But they're indicating to us that wouldn't be anything until at least probably 2026. When we do hear conversations about Fancher Road expansion, we ask obvious questions like, well, gee, you got a big hill and you got a cemetery on each side and it's very narrow. you know, how might you think you could accomplish that? Maybe there are other ways if you need that kind of corridor that we might suggest you think about. Basically because there is land there in certain areas that, you know, isn't developed yet. Tom, you have something to add?
So the only point I would make about roads and utilities in general is that township is virtually powerless to drive decision-making. Just nature, we are placeholders for future development. We govern ourselves until somebody else wants to do it. So with the roads, we can talk to the county engineer's office, we can express our displeasure with what they're doing or their lack of insight into what's happening in the township. And they don't have to listen to us because we don't carry a big stick. And that's part, I think, of what Holly has been talking about. If we don't have a strategic partner somewhere out in the woods, we're here by ourselves. We got, nobody's gonna listen to us.
Yeah, as I said earlier in my presentation, it's that leverage issue, right? We basically can talk and tell and say what we want, but there's really no leverage to get the action that we're looking for. Hence the idea of looking for somebody that can help us with that.
Well, while we're on that topic, another question came in along those lines. Is the extension of Smothers Road a given and where would it extend to? So
Short answer is not a given from anything that we've heard. Certainly they put a roundabout there, that is kind of the county line that shoots up through there. But we haven't heard of any definitive plan. Hence, again, that's the reason we're looking for more leverage to see, could that become part of a plan? Not for us to say, but we would like to think that if it's a necessary thing that we need increased traffic to flow that direction, we'd like to be able to influence that more with more power than what we have today.
okay.
Good questions.
Well, other input. We don't need to drag this out for the sake of dragging it out, but I mean, we are, trying to make sure we're getting as much input as possible where we should be spending our time. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about having a big informational meeting, like at a church, like back in October, or like wait until after the holidays. Is that any more thought about?
Yes,
know.
we're trying to see exactly where we're going. And once we kind of have a focus and a plan on what direction and maybe find who's gonna work with us. Then that's when we want to do something. We want to make sure we do those meetings and we have real information to come back to y'all.
Not that this isn't all real information.
No,
but-
yes. I'm sorry, I guess I said, Carl did it again.
We had the big series of community meetings where we had specifically the
Right.
quick strategy guide to discuss. And since then, we've been really working to implement that quick strategy guide, and I just feel like we haven't yet had another one of those big step forward moments.
Big
But
milestone.
we also don't want to ignore that we need to be able to communicate to the residents, so we probably will have something in the near future, but I think it's just a matter of.
And I guess when I said that, I mean, I look at our monthly meetings, y'all come with input all the time for us. Well, I guess I want to make sure, yes, we're gonna have one of the bigger little shows.
Well, and the monthly meetings will continue. Right now, our schedule is roughly one a month and they're posted on the website. We've been having the public monthly meeting like tonight. And then we're also having the sub-working committee meetings taking place because that's where an awful lot of the work gets done. But we will absolutely continue to have at minimum one monthly meeting a month open for full public participation. And, as we've said many times before, you're welcome to come on in and, with the only warning being you might get a task. So we might ask you to join in on something, but we'll keep doing that. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the school has posted that they're gonna have a big meeting. Is it gonna cover basically?
No, they had a school board meeting that Molly was watching.
Oh, yeah, they just had their annual organizational meeting.
There's one that was posted, I think, on Facebook or something. It said on the
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The
information for the community. So
Sunbury is hosting like I don't know if it's a realtor woman or something, but someone's doing like an intel on Intel
okay,
speech
is that what it
or
is?
presentation that I think is
How it
hosted at the
impacts-
school
yeah.
auditorium. I can't remember the date on it. I think I have it screenshotted, but yes, the like Sunbury or someone in
Legislature or something
Sunbury has
like that.
organized some kind of informational meeting about like the impact that Intel is having on the region at large. That's not anything that Harlem Township specifically has been involved in organizing, but if anyone is.
Find that though, we could put that
Yeah.
out on email, right?
25th of,
I.
Okay, well, let's see what we can find
Yeah.
here, but I,
but I didn't know how
Yeah,
much different that would be
January
than.
24th, 6 p.m. at the Big Walnut High School Auditorium. And it looks like this was organized by the Big Walnut Chamber of Commerce, along with the city of Sunbury. And they present Intel on Intel with Betsy Goldstein, whoever that is.
but we could get that out. I mean, I could see where our residents would be interested in that. I would be interested in that, so we'll let people know. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, Mr. Chairman, well, I think we've run our leash here tonight.
Well, we've done good and we still got 16 minutes before we'd have to take a vote on staying longer. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Please, please, please. The only thing I'm going to ask is that, you know, I'm constantly getting phone calls, which I'm fine with, about somebody hearing a rumor. You know, and when is the 80-story high rise going in? Well, but I'm just saying, these are the kind of things that happen. You know, if you hear something, please, if you have the email or the contact of one of us, just contact us.
SPC at harlemtwp.com.
Bingo, that's why she's here. Now, just contact us. We need to stop all the rumor mills. Because that's usually how all the misinformation starts.
But, you know, I would say, other than, I mean, I'm sorry for your phone calls, but beyond
I'm
that.
fine with it.
But I have to say in general, you know, the community has been very balanced over the course of this past year. I mean, we haven't had any explosions on Nextdoor. I mean, I kind of watch that on a daily basis, just again, so that we can keep the communication going if something pops up. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's the, you know, if you see something, say something so that we can address it and get it on the table. So.
That's everything. Anybody else have anything? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion, I have a second. Motion second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you all.
All of you on Zoom, thanks for joining in tonight. I appreciate your input as well. We'll, and remember, you can join any of the meetings on Zoom in the future. Thank you.
Scott says, is anyone looking at a federal grant street?
Federal grants, yeah.
Huh?
Federal grants to do what we want to do.
Yeah, to aid community.
Yeah.
I tweeted.
There's other things that he mentioned. Scott mentioned. There are some.
What you gave me is out the address of
Rainy.
506, so, yeah.
That's a result. of this is what you that. In the community.